The sun was setting on the small town of Millhaven, casting a golden glow over the streets. The town was peaceful on the surface, with its well-kept lawns, friendly neighbors, and a sense of community that seemed unwavering. Yet beneath this serene exterior, there lay an undercurrent of tension that simmered just out of sight, an unspoken divide that had persisted for years. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. At the edge of town, in a quiet neighborhood, 16-year-old Keisha Johnson was walking home from the local library. Keisha was bright and ambitious, with dreams of becoming a lawyer. She often stayed late at the library, losing herself in books about civil rights, justice, and the stories of people who had fought for equality. She believed that one day she could make a difference. Keisha was lost in thought, headphones in her ears, when she noticed flashing red and blue lights in her peripheral vision. A police cruiser pulled up alongside her. She glanced over, her stomach tightening. Millhaven wasn't exactly known for its welcoming police force, especially toward people who looked like her. "Hey!" barked the officer from the car. His name tag read Officer Burns. He was a burly man with a stern face, his hand resting casually on the grip of his holstered gun. "What are you doing out here?" Keisha stopped, lowering her headphones. "Walking home, sir," she replied, her voice steady but polite. She had learned from her parents how to handle encounters like this. Stay calm, respectful, and compliant. Burns stepped out of the car, his boots crunching on the gravel. His demeanor was immediately aggressive. "Walking home? At this hour? What are you really doing?" Keisha frowned, confused. "I was at the library. It closes at 8 and I'm heading home." The officer's eyes narrowed. "Library, huh? Show me some ID." Keisha hesitated. "I don't have ID with me. I wasn't expecting—" "Not expecting what? To get caught?" He interrupted, stepping closer. "Let me see your bag." Keisha's heart began to race. "It's just books and my school stuff," she explained, holding her bag tightly. "I said let me see your bag!" His voice rose, sharp and commanding. Fear prickled at the edges of her mind, but Keisha stood her ground. "Sir, I know my rights. You can't search my bag without—" Her sentence was cut off as Burns grabbed her arm roughly, yanking her forward. Keisha cried out in pain, dropping her bag. "Hey, stop! You're hurting me!" The officer's grip tightened, and before Keisha could say another word, he shoved her against the hood of his car. "Resisting an officer, huh?" he growled, twisting her arm behind her back. Keisha's mind raced. She was scared, humiliated, and angry all at once. Tears welled up in her eyes as she struggled to process what was happening. She hadn't done anything wrong. Why was this happening to her? Unbeknownst to Officer Burns, someone had witnessed the entire scene. A black SUV had pulled up a block away, its engine idling as the driver watched from the shadows. The man behind the wheel was tall and broad-shouldered, his sharp features illuminated by the glow of his phone as he recorded the encounter. His name was Marcus Johnson, Keisha's father, and what Officer Burns didn't know was that Marcus wasn't just any father. He was a senior agent with the FBI, a man trained to handle dangerous situations, and one who deeply understood the systemic issues that plagued law enforcement. Marcus's blood boiled as he watched Burns manhandle his daughter. His hands tightened around the steering wheel, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had spent years teaching Keisha to be level-headed in moments like this, and now it was his turn to practice what he preached. He reached for his phone and dialed the local police precinct. "This is Agent Marcus Johnson, FBI," he said calmly when the desk sergeant answered. "I need you to connect me with your captain immediately." The sergeant hesitated. What's this regarding, Agent Johnson?" Marcus's voice dropped, each word measured and deliberate. "It's regarding one of your officers assaulting my daughter." The sergeant stammered, promising to connect him right away. Marcus ended the call and stepped out of his SUV, his towering presence cutting an imposing figure as he approached the scene. By now, a small crowd had gathered, their murmurs of concern and outrage filling the air. Burns looked up, his grip still on Keisha's arm. "Step back, sir. This is police business." Marcus's eyes locked onto the officer, his expression icy. "Let go of my daughter." Burns blinked, momentarily thrown off by the man's authoritative tone. "Your daughter? Look, I don't know who you think you are, but—" "I'm Special Agent Marcus Johnson with the Federal Bureau of Investigation," Marcus interrupted, pulling out his badge and holding it up. "And you are assaulting my minor child without cause." The color drained from Burns's face. He released Keisha's arm as though it had burned him, stepping back awkwardly. I didn't realize... Didn't realize what? Marcus demanded, his voice cold. That you were abusing your power? That you were targeting a young black girl walking home because of your own biases? Burns opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. The crowd around them had grown, their phones raised, recording every second of the encounter. Marcus turned to Keisha, who was rubbing her wrist, her face streaked with tears. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" he asked gently. Keisha nodded, though her voice trembled as she said, "I'm fine, Dad." Marcus's gaze shifted back to Burns, his anger barely contained. "This isn't over," he said, his tone a promise rather than a threat. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, handing it to the nearest bystander. "Send me your footage," he instructed. "We're going to make sure justice is served." The following days were a whirlwind. The video of the encounter went viral, sparking outrage across the country. Protests erupted in Millhaven, with residents demanding accountability for Officer Burns and systemic changes within the police department. Marcus used his position to ensure that an independent investigation was launched, working tirelessly to bring attention to the deeper issues at play. As the investigation unfolded, more stories about Burns's misconduct came to light. Several residents came forward, sharing their own experiences of being harassed or mistreated by the officer. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Meanwhile, Keisha found herself thrust into the spotlight. She was interviewed by journalists, invited to speak at rallies, and praised for her bravery. Despite the trauma she had endured, she remained composed and focused, channeling her pain into advocacy. "This isn't just about me," she said in one interview. "It's about changing a system that allows this kind of behavior to happen in the first place." Through it all, Marcus stood by her side, his pride in his daughter matched only by his determination to protect her. He knew that their fight was far from over, but he also knew that together, they were making a difference. As they walked together through a peaceful protest one evening, Keisha looked up at her father. "Do you think we're making a difference?" she asked. Marcus smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We already have," he replied, "and we're just getting started." The impact of the incident rippled far beyond the small town of Millhaven. News outlets from across the country latched onto the story, highlighting not just the blatant abuse of power by Officer Burns, but also the underlying racial tensions that fueled such encounters. What began as a localized controversy quickly evolved into a national conversation about systemic racism in law enforcement, the unchecked authority of certain officers, and the unspoken fears many families of color navigated daily. Keisha's home became a hub of activity in the weeks following the incident. The constant stream of journalists, activists, lawyers, and community leaders was overwhelming at first. Her mother, Angela, worked tirelessly to shield Keisha from the worst of it, balancing her role as a protective parent and an ally in the fight for justice. Angela was a school teacher, well-versed in the art of patience and resilience. She knew how to navigate the emotional toll of the sudden media attention, even when her heart ached for her daughter's stolen innocence. Keisha herself had moments of doubt. She had never sought the spotlight and found the newfound attention both empowering and exhausting. Strangers sent her messages of support, sharing their own harrowing stories of injustice and thanking her for standing up. Others, however, sent hateful racist messages, their words dripping with venom and fear of change. Some questioned her motives, accusing her of exaggerating the incident for attention. These words cut deeply, and while Marcus and Angela worked to insulate her from the negativity, they knew they couldn't protect her from it entirely. One night, after hours of scrolling through social media and reading the conflicting responses to her story, Keisha broke down. Tears streamed down her face as she sat on the edge of her bed, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. Marcus found her there, her phone clutched tightly in her hand, her body trembling with silent sobs. "Dad," she whispered when she saw him, her voice raw with emotion. "Why do they hate me? I didn't do anything wrong." Marcus sat beside her, wrapping his arms around her in a protective embrace. "It's not you they hate, baby," he said softly. "It's what you represent. You're a reminder that their world isn't perfect, that change is coming, and that scares them." Keisha looked up at him, her tear-filled eyes searching his face for reassurance. "But what if I'm not strong enough to keep doing this? What if I just want it all to go away?" Marcus's heart ached at her vulnerability, but he also saw the spark of determination in her gaze. Keisha, being strong doesn't mean you never feel scared or overwhelmed. It means you keep going, even when it's hard. And you're not doing this alone. Your mom and I, this whole community, we're all here to support you. His words gave her a renewed sense of purpose. Over the following days, Keisha threw herself into action. She joined forces with local youth organizations to organize town hall meetings, providing a platform for people to share their stories and demand accountability from local leaders. She worked with activists to create workshops for young people, teaching them about their rights and how to navigate interactions with law enforcement. At one of these workshops, Keisha met Jamal Harris, a law student at a nearby university who had been following her story closely. Jamal was articulate, passionate, and deeply knowledgeable about civil rights law. He offered to help her structure her workshops, teaching her about the legal nuances that shape the systemic issues they were addressing. "You've got a gift, Keisha," Jamal told her after one particularly successful session. "You know how to connect with people, how to inspire them. That's not something you can teach." Keisha blushed at the compliment but took his words to heart. She realized that her voice, young as it was, carried power. She had the ability to inspire change, not just in Millhaven, but beyond. Meanwhile, Marcus was working tirelessly behind the scenes. As an FBI agent, he was keenly aware of the complexities involved in holding law enforcement accountable. He reached out to colleagues across the country, forming alliances with those who shared his commitment to justice. Together, they began compiling data on similar incidents, building a case for broader reform. One of Marcus's colleagues, Agent Lisa Tran, was particularly instrumental. She was an expert in community policing and had spent years advocating for the implementation of body cameras and de-escalation training in police departments. Together, they developed a comprehensive proposal for reforming the Millhaven Police Department, which included mandatory bias training, stricter oversight mechanisms, and the establishment of a civilian review board. The proposal faced immediate resistance from certain factions within the police department and local government. Some saw it as an attack on law enforcement, a challenge to their authority. Others, however, recognized it as a necessary step forward. The debates were heated, both in town hall meetings and behind closed doors. Marcus and Lisa found themselves navigating a delicate balance between diplomacy and advocacy, working to build consensus while refusing to compromise on the core principles of their proposal. One of the most surprising allies they gained was Captain Maria Delgado, the head of the Millhaven Police Department. Delgado was a no-nonsense leader who had risen through the ranks despite facing her own share of discrimination as a Latina woman in law enforcement. She had seen firsthand the damage caused by officers like Burns and was determined to clean up her department. "Burns was a symptom, not the disease," Delgado said during one meeting with Marcus and Lisa. "If we don't address the root causes, we'll just keep dealing with the same problems over and over." Her support was a game changer. With Delgado's backing, the reform proposal gained traction, and the town council eventually approved it. Implementation began immediately, and while the changes were met with skepticism by some, the overall impact was undeniably positive. As Millhaven began its journey toward reform, Keisha's story continued to resonate on a national level. She was invited to speak at conferences and appeared on panels alongside prominent activists and policymakers. Each time, she shared her story with unflinching honesty, using her platform to amplify the voices of others who had experienced similar injustices. One such opportunity brought her to Washington, D.C., where she spoke at a congressional hearing on police reform. Standing in front of lawmakers, cameras flashing around her, Keisha felt a mix of nerves and determination. She took a deep breath and began. "My name is Keisha Johnson," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "I'm here today because I survived an encounter that could have ended very differently. But I'm not here just for myself. I'm here for every person who has been silenced, who has been told that their pain doesn't matter. We deserve better. We deserve justice." Her words were met with applause, and her testimony became a rallying cry for those pushing for meaningful change. Over time, Keisha's activism grew into a larger movement, one that spanned beyond police reform to address issues of education, economic inequality, and community empowerment. Back in Millhaven, life slowly began to return to a sense of normalcy. The town was far from perfect, but the progress it had made was undeniable. Keisha returned to school, determined to continue her studies and pursue her dream of becoming a lawyer. She knew that her journey was just beginning, but she also knew that she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. One evening, as the Johnson family gathered around the dinner table, Marcus raised his glass in a toast. "To Keisha," he said, his voice filled with pride, "for turning pain into purpose and showing us all what it means to be brave." Keisha smiled, her heart full as her family and friends echoed the toast. She knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but she also knew that she wasn't walking it alone. Together, they had proven that even in the face of injustice, hope and determination could light the way forward. And with that hope, they looked toward the future, ready to continue the fight for a world where no one would ever have to endure what Keisha had experienced. A world where justice truly was for all. As time passed, the Johnson family found themselves adjusting to a new rhythm of life. The events surrounding Keisha's encounter with Officer Burns had created a profound shift in their community, but it also placed a spotlight on their family that sometimes felt all-consuming. Keisha's story had evolved into a symbol of resilience and justice, yet the personal toll it had taken on her and those closest to her was significant. For Keisha, life had become a balancing act. She was still a teenager, navigating school, friendships, and the usual challenges of adolescence. But she was also a public figure, expected to speak with wisdom far beyond her years. It was a dichotomy that weighed on her heavily, though she rarely let it show. Most days, she managed to juggle the demands with grace, but there were moments when the pressure threatened to overwhelm her. One Saturday afternoon, Keisha was sitting in her room, surrounded by books and notebooks as she prepared for an upcoming debate tournament. She had joined her school's debate team that year, inspired by her growing passion for advocacy. The topic for the tournament was criminal justice reform, a subject she knew intimately but still felt compelled to research thoroughly. As she worked, her best friend Maya texted her, asking if she wanted to hang out at the mall. Keisha stared at the message for a long moment, torn between her desire to take a break and her determination to stay on top of her responsibilities. After a brief hesitation, she texted back, apologizing and explaining that she couldn't make it. Maya's response was understanding, but it still left Keisha feeling a pang of guilt. She missed the days when her biggest worries were school assignments and weekend plans with friends. Now, every decision she made seemed to carry the weight of her newfound role as an activist and role model. Later that evening, Marcus knocked on her door, peeking his head in before stepping inside. He had a sixth sense for when his daughter needed support. "How's the research going?" he asked, glancing at the organized chaos on her desk. Keisha sighed, running a hand through her hair. "It's fine, just a lot. I feel like I have to know everything about this topic because everyone expects me to be some kind of expert." Marcus sat down on the edge of her bed, his expression thoughtful. "You don't have to be an expert, Keisha. People listen to you because you speak from the heart. You've lived this. That's what makes your voice powerful." Keisha nodded, appreciating his words but still feeling the pressure. "It's just hard, Dad. Sometimes I feel like I'm carrying the weight of the world, and I'm not sure I'm strong enough." Marcus reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to carry it alone. You've got so many people in your corner, your mom, me, Maya, Jamal, and the whole community. And it's okay to take a step back when you need to. Taking care of yourself doesn't mean you're letting anyone down." His words stayed with her, a reminder that she didn't have to shoulder the burden of change by herself. Over the next few weeks, Keisha made a conscious effort to create balance in her life. She allowed herself to enjoy small moments of normalcy, watching movies with her family, hanging out with Maya, and even taking a few weekends off from her advocacy work. These breaks rejuvenated her, giving her the strength to dive back into her efforts with renewed energy. Meanwhile, Marcus and Angela worked to ensure that their family remained grounded amidst the chaos. They made it a priority to have regular family dinners, where they could connect and talk about anything and everything from school projects to news headlines. These moments of togetherness were a reminder of what they were fighting for, a future where families like theirs could live without fear. Angela, who had always been deeply involved in the local community through her work as a teacher, began collaborating with other parents and educators to address systemic issues in the school system. She knew that creating lasting change required tackling inequities at every level, including education. With her colleagues, she organized workshops on cultural sensitivity, implicit bias, and equitable teaching practices, ensuring that the next generation would grow up with a deeper understanding of empathy and inclusion. At the same time, Marcus continued his work within the FBI, leveraging his position to advocate for internal changes. He partnered with other agents who shared his vision, pushing for reforms that prioritized accountability and community trust. He also began mentoring younger agents, emphasizing the importance of integrity and compassion in law enforcement. One of the young agents he mentored, Devin Martinez, quickly became one of his strongest allies. Devin was eager to learn and deeply committed to making a difference. Under Marcus's guidance, he spearheaded a pilot program in another town that focused on building bridges between law enforcement and marginalized communities. The program showed promising results, and Marcus hoped it could serve as a model for other departments across the country. As the Johnson family worked tirelessly in their respective spheres, the broader movement they had helped ignite continued to gain momentum. In Millhaven, the changes to the police department were beginning to take root. Officers were undergoing rigorous training, and the newly established Civilian Review Board was actively holding the department accountable. While some residents remained skeptical, many were hopeful that these reforms would lead to a safer, more equitable community. Keisha also began to see the fruits of her labor. Her workshops had expanded, reaching neighboring towns and inspiring similar initiatives in other communities. She was invited to participate in a national youth summit where young leaders from across the country gathered to share their ideas and strategies for creating change. At the summit, Keisha met a diverse group of peers who were tackling issues ranging from environmental justice to immigration reform. She was struck by their passion and resilience, and the experience left her feeling more connected to a larger movement. It reminded her that while her story was unique, her fight was part of a broader struggle for justice and equality. One of the most memorable moments of the summit came during a panel discussion on youth leadership. Keisha shared her story, speaking candidly about the challenges she had faced and the lessons she had learned. Her words resonated deeply with the audience, sparking a standing ovation that left her both humbled and inspired. Among those in the audience was a young filmmaker named Simone Reed, who approached Keisha after the panel. Simone was working on a documentary about youth activism and wanted to include Keisha's journey as a central narrative. Initially hesitant, Keisha ultimately agreed, recognizing the potential of the documentary to amplify her message. Over the next several months, Simone and her team followed Keisha as she navigated her dual roles as a student and activist. The documentary captured her triumphs and struggles, painting an intimate portrait of a young woman determined to make a difference. It also highlighted the broader systemic issues she was fighting against, weaving together stories from other communities to create a powerful, cohesive narrative. When the documentary premiered at a prestigious film festival, it received widespread acclaim. Critics praised its raw honesty and compelling storytelling, while audiences were moved by its message of hope and resilience. The documentary brought Keisha's story to an even wider audience, sparking conversations in households, classrooms, and boardrooms across the country. For Keisha, the experience was surreal. She had never imagined that her life would become the subject of a film, let alone one that had such a profound impact. Yet she was grateful for the opportunity to share her journey and inspire others to take action. By the time Keisha graduated high school, she had already accomplished more than most people could dream of. Yet she knew that her work was far from finished. She had been accepted to a prestigious university where she planned to study law and continue her advocacy on an even larger scale. As she prepared to leave Millhaven for the next chapter of her life, Keisha reflected on how much she had grown. The shy, bookish girl who had once been afraid to speak up had transformed into a confident, determined young woman ready to take on the world. On the night before she left for college, the Johnson family gathered in their backyard for a small celebration. Friends, neighbors, and community members came to wish Keisha well, their smiles and kind words a testament to the impact she had made. When it was time for Keisha to give a speech, she stood beneath the soft glow of string lights, her voice steady and full of gratitude. "I wouldn't be here without all of you," she said, looking out at the faces of those who had supported her. This community has shown me what it means to stand together, to fight for what's right, and to never give up, even when it's hard. I'm leaving for college tomorrow, but I'll carry everything I've learned here with me, and I promise to keep fighting. For all of us." The crowd erupted in applause, and as Keisha looked out at the sea of familiar faces, she felt a deep sense of pride and purpose. She knew that her story was just beginning and that the path ahead would be challenging, but she also knew that she was ready. As the night wore on and the celebration continued, Marcus pulled Keisha aside, his expression both proud and wistful. "You're going to do amazing things," he told her. "But remember, no matter how far you go, this will always be your home." Keisha hugged her father tightly, her heart full of love and determination. "I know, Dad," she said, "and I'll never forget where I came from." With those words, she looked toward the future, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The fight for justice was far from over, but Keisha Johnson was more than prepared to lead the charge. Keisha's transition to university life was both exhilarating and overwhelming. Stepping onto the sprawling campus, she was struck by the sheer diversity of people and ideas that surrounded her. It was a far cry from the close-knit community of Millhaven, but Keisha welcomed the change. She saw it as an opportunity to broaden her horizons, learn from others, and continue building the foundation for her future as an advocate and leader. One of the highlights of her early days on campus was joining the university's debate team. While her high school experience had given her confidence, the collegiate level was a new challenge entirely. Her teammates were sharp and articulate, their arguments meticulously researched and presented. Keisha quickly realized that while she had a strong foundation, there was still much to learn. Her coach, Professor Elena Warren, became an important mentor. Professor Warren was a former civil rights attorney who had dedicated her career to fostering the next generation of leaders. She saw immense potential in Keisha and took her under her wing, helping her refine her rhetoric and develop a deeper understanding of policy and law. "Your story is powerful, Keisha," Professor Warren told her during one practice session. "But to create real change, you need to pair that passion with precision. Facts, precedents, and well-crafted arguments will amplify your voice even further." Keisha embraced the advice, diving into her studies with renewed determination. She spent countless hours in the library poring over legal texts and historical case studies. Each piece of knowledge she gained felt like another tool in her arsenal, equipping her to tackle the systemic injustices she had long sought to dismantle. Outside of academics, Keisha found herself building a new network of friends and allies. Her roommate, Samira, was an environmental science major with a fiery passion for climate justice. The two bonded over late-night conversations about their respective causes, often drawing parallels between their struggles and brainstorming ways to collaborate. It was through Samira that Keisha learned about intersectionality, the idea that various forms of oppression are interconnected. The concept resonated deeply with her, helping her understand how her own fight for racial justice fit into a larger framework of systemic inequality. It also reinforced her belief that solidarity across movements was essential for creating lasting change. As the semester progressed, Keisha became increasingly involved in campus activism. She helped organize a series of panel discussions on topics ranging from police reform to education equity, inviting speakers from diverse backgrounds to share their expertise. The events were well attended, sparking thoughtful dialogue and fostering a sense of unity among the student body. One particular panel, focused on youth leadership, left a lasting impression on Keisha. The speakers included young activists from various fields, each sharing their experiences and strategies for overcoming challenges. Listening to their stories, Keisha felt both inspired and validated. She realized that while her journey was unique, it was also part of a larger tapestry of resilience and determination. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on the cops' actions toward the girl in the story? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.